In a semi-basement apartment in the slums, Ki-woo is once again attempting to steal Wi-Fi from neighbors. He searches for signals in his damp and cramped home where he lives with his father Ki-taek, mother Chung-suk, and sister Ki-jung. The Kim family struggles on the edge of poverty, earning a meager income by temporarily folding pizza boxes. They even leave their window open during neighborhood fumigation, taking advantage of the free fumigation to address their own pest problem, despite the risk of choking on fumes. The Kims' lives take a turn when Ki-woo's friend Min-hyuk pays a visit to the family and gives them a scholar's rock as a gift, believed to bring wealth and success to its owners. Later, while having a drink, Min-hyuk suggests that Ki-woo take over his job as an English tutor for a wealthy family's daughter, as he is leaving to study abroad. Min-hyuk shows Ki-woo a picture, explaining that he is in love with the daughter and plans to officially date her once she enters university. He believes that Ki-woo is the only one he can trust to be her tutor, as other university lads might try to win her over. Despite Ki-woo's uncertainty due to a lack of college qualifications, Min-hyuk promises to vouch for him and hints that his sister Ki-jung is skilled at Photoshop. Ki-woo agrees and asks Ki-jung to create a fake certificate for him to bring to the interview. Ki-woo shows up at the Park residence. Upon entering, he is captivated by the immaculately manicured lawn with trimmed trees around the gigantic house. The family's housekeeper welcomes him and shares that she had worked for the previous owner, an architect who designed the house. When the architect sold the house to the Park family, he introduced her to stay on as the housekeeper. Ki-woo meets Mrs. Park and introduces himself as Kevin. When asked to conduct a demo class, Ki-woo's clever acting and strategic deceptions convince Mrs. Park of his expertise as an English tutor, leading her to hire him immediately. In the living room, Mrs. Park pays him, and Ki-woo encounters their unruly 9-year-old son, Da-song. Mrs. Park shows Ki-woo her son's painting, believing he has untapped potential as an artist. She also mentions the challenge of retaining art tutors, expressing the need for one. Recognizing an opportunity to secure a job for his artistically talented sister, Ki-woo informs Mrs. Park that he knows an art therapist named Jessica, who would be perfect for the position. The following day, Ki-woo introduces Mrs. Park to Ki-jung. Ki-jung smoothly plays the part, reshaping Da-sung into a more respectful child. She impresses Mrs. Park with fake insights about psychology, gathered from her online research the night before. While analyzing Da-sung's drawing, she interprets the bottom right-hand corner as an expression of past trauma. Mrs. Park gasps, nodding along in agreement with everything Ki-jung says. Ki-jung mentions she has a higher rate as she is an art therapist, and Mrs. Park consents. Mr. Park returns home and is introduced to Ki-jung. Mr. Park instructs his chauffeur to drive her home. Ki-jung strategically leaves her undergarments in the car to frame him, giving the impression of a sexual encounter and resulting in his termination. She then recommends her uncle's chauffeur to take the position, who is actually her father, Ki-taek. The Kims plot to secure jobs for each family member with the Parks, and their final move is to orchestrate the dismissal of the housekeeper. Ki-woo discovers from Da-hai that the housekeeper has a severe allergy to peaches, so the Kims exploit this peach allergy to trigger allergic reactions. They then convince Mrs. Park that the housekeeper has tuberculosis and is extremely contagious, making it unsafe for her to be around their child. Consequently, the housekeeper is terminated, and their mother, Chung-suk, is offered the job, successfully deceiving the Park family into hiring the entire Kim family. The Park family decides to go camping for the weekend to celebrate Da-song's birthday. The Kim family takes full advantage of the opportunity to have the house to themselves. As they revel in the luxuries of the house, their enjoyment is interrupted when the doorbell unexpectedly rings. It's the previous housekeeper. She claims she was fired so swiftly that she left something important in the basement and wishes to retrieve it. As Chung-suk hesitantly allows her in, the rest of the family quickly takes cover. The housekeeper goes down to the basement, and Chung-suk follows her, revealing a secret bunker behind a large cabinet. She goes through a hidden entrance to an underground bunker created by the previous owner, a fact not disclosed when the house was sold to the Parkers. In the bunker, Chung-suk shockingly discovers that the housekeeper's husband has been secretly living there for 4 years to avoid debt sharks. The housekeeper pleads with Chung-suk to allow her husband to stay in the bunker, promising to provide him with food once a week in exchange for regular payments. As Chung-suk decided to call the police, the rest of the Kim family accidentally fell off the stairs, revealing themselves to be related. This inadvertent revelation exposes their deception, and the housekeeper records them on her phone, threatening to expose them to the Parks. She uses this leverage to manipulate the Kims into complying with her demands. A fight breaks out in the living room as the Kims attempt to delete the video. During the chaos, the Parks call to inform Chung-suk that they've canceled their camping trip due to a severe rainstorm flooding the campgrounds, and they will be home in 8 minutes. The Kims hurry to clean up the mess they've made as much as possible. Ki-taek manages to subdue the housekeeper and her husband, tying them up and imprisoning them back in the bunker. The Parkers return, and the rest of the family hides as Chung-suk serves dinner. The housekeeper attempts to escape and goes upstairs. Chung-suk kicks her back down the steps, and she bangs her head, resulting in a grave injury. While eating, Mrs. Park shares with Chung-suk that Da-song had a traumatic experience on a previous birthday. On that day, Dae-song sneaked out at night to have some leftover cake, and he suffered a seizure when he saw a ghost emerging from the basement, who was actually the housekeeper's husband. As the Kims attempt to escape, Da-song runs downstairs and demands to camp in the backyard. Mr. and Mrs. Park end up staying in the living room to keep an eye on Da-song, forcing the Kims to hide under the table. Overhearing the Parks grumble about Mr. Kim's odor, which they associate with lower-class people, the Kims eventually sneak out after the Parks are asleep. When they return home, they find their apartment completely flooded with rain and sewage. Ki-woo takes the rock, and the family spends the night at a shelter in a gym. The next day, Mrs. Park decides to host an impromptu celebration for Da-song's birthday and calls Ki-taek in to work, inviting Ki-jung and Ki-woo as guests. Ki-woo brings the rock down into the bunker intending to end the housekeeper and her husband's lives, only to find out the housekeeper has already died. Ki-woo is ambushed by the husband, tries to run away, but he gets bludgeoned in the head with the rock, leaving him lying in a pool of blood. The husband escapes the bunker, takes a knife, and, seeking revenge for his wife, enters the party and stabs Ki-jung in the chest in front of the horrified guests. The celebration devolves into a nightmare. Da-song has another seizure upon seeing the husband again. Mr. Park screams at Ki-taek for the car keys to take Da-song to the hospital. Ki-taek throws the car keys to Mr. Park and falls under the husband, who is fighting with Chung-suk. She fatally impales him with a barbecue skewer. Mr. Park grabs the keys under the body, but expresses disgust at the odor, provoking Ki-taek, who snaps and stabs Mr. Park before escaping. Weeks later, Ki-woo wakes up in the hospital after being in a coma, unable to stop laughing due to his brain injury. He and Chung-suk are convicted of fraud and put on probation. He discovers Ki-jung's death, and there has been no indication of their father. The authorities have been searching for him throughout the country for Mr. Park's murder. Ki-woo goes to the Park family's former house, now owned by a German family, where he spies from afar. He notices the lights flickering in Morse code, realizing his father is controlling the lights from inside the bunker. Ki-woo translates the Morse code and learns that his father is now hiding in the bunker, creeping upstairs for food from the new owners. His father sends the message every day, hoping Ki-woo will see it. Ki-woo goes home and prepares a letter in response, in which he dreams that one day he will be wealthy enough to buy the mansion and free his father.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.